What is going on, everyone? My name's Sweaty Zeus, and this is going to be a quick review in progress for Wuchang Fallen Feathers. Now, this is the first one of these I've ever done, and I will say the reasoning for that is because I've been having a lot of fun with it. I'm also doing a walkthrough and doing guide videos on the upgrade stuff, like in this game, your health upgrades are called your mana potion upgrades, but basically, I'm going to be putting all that out, and I don't want to rush my way through and finish this as fast as I can to get the review out. I'm enjoying it, and I don't enjoy every game that comes out these days as much as this. So when it happens, I want to relish it and have fun with it. So, and I pretty much decided, I think about 15 hours in, that I am really into this game. Now, I do have some reservations, a few things here and there that I don't think are perfect, and then there's a lot of talk about the performance issues, which I'll go into detail my experience with that on PC, on a higher end PC, but not and I'm not rocking like a 5090, like $5,000 liquid cooled card or anything, but I do have a newer card. So anyways, without further ado, I'll jump in real quick. As you can see, one of the first boss fights here playing in the background. I will say, like, as far as comparatives, if you like Bloodborne, if you like Sekiro, if you like Souls likes, it is a Souls like, but it's got elements of, Stellar Blade, Devil May Cry. It's a little more action packed, fast paced. Once you get the hang of it, it does feel like every other one at first, but as you learn the systems, the sky's the limit, and there's a really high skill ceiling. So, and before we jump into the review proper, I did just want to say there aren't any major spoilers in this video. It's just going to cover the first 5 to 7 hours of the game. The two bosses I show are featured in pretty much every trailer they've put out. So if you're aware of the game, you've probably seen almost everything in this. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I did just want to let you know you don't have to worry about that. There's even a really cool moment early on that was so unique. I hadn't seen it in any other game, and I wanted to show it, but I left it out just so you can experience the surprise of that yourself. So, anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and yeah, let me know what you think. So, first off, let's talk about the performance. I'm not sure if this is due to my card being a 90 series, which is a 9070 XT for reference. They have FSR4. I don't know what the game's running on. I haven't been able to find that yet because it just came out like 2 days ago. But that's not available yet on older cards, so I don't know if that's what's causing the difference. But there's been a lot of complaint about the performance online regarding the PC version. For me, it seems great. Um, you can see in a lot of these captures, I'm running 120 FPS. I am running the game in 4K native, and so there's no upscaling. I do have frame gen on, but even without frame gen, I was running like solid 75 plus to 90. It usually stayed right in there. I never saw any real massive drops. There were the occasional stutters when it would load a new area, but that's really the only thing I noticed that was really even kind of slightly bothering me. With all the complaints I've seen about the performance, I at least wanted to touch this and say, hey, it's been running great for me. I have seen console seems to be getting mostly positive feedback, but the performance for PC is even affected. It was overwhelmingly negative right at launch, even though the game's been really good. With what most people say they think about the actual game, it's just been kind of a performance thing. So for me, it's been a 9 out of 10. I barely had any problems. I did have to play with the settings a little bit to get it ideal, but it's launched in a better state than almost anything I've played over the last 3 or 4 years. So, but again, that may be just because of my card. I don't know. I really think this is probably closer to a 9 or a 9.5 even. But after Elden Ring and Sekiro's implementation of stealth, I feel like crouching and stealth are pretty much a requirement for this genre, especially in a game like this where you have, story wise, a character who's physically smaller and, she's taking on such large mobs by herself at points. There's big open areas where you can actually, if you're not careful, stumble into fighting like 10 or 15 enemies at once. So I do think having stealth in games like this to me feels almost like it's something missing when it's not there. Um, but I really would have preferred them add that. But short of that, it's really really good, and I've kind of loved everything about it. Um, but it always works for me better when it allows you to kind of strategize on what order you're taking enemies out in these bigger areas, especially with like Eastern action RPGs. So like when you dodge, if your iframes line up with the attack, so like you perfect dodge it basically, you will get Skybound Might, which is like your currency for it's like your energy basically. So that allows you to use skills or magic. Different skills in magic that you use have different values as far as how much they use. So you build that up over dodging, but you can build it up really quick and get a ton of it built up, and it'll even do things like mitigate damage based on talismans, things like that. So there's a lot of customization as far as the way you play, but I do think the dodge is incorporated really well, even though it's probably a little easy. I think it needs to be here the way they did it. So all the enemy attacks are properly telegraphed. Hitboxes seem really good. The movement is tight, um, and has that kind of. It does have a little bit of a floaty feel, but I don't mind that. I know it just kind of depends on the game and getting used to it. But things still feel weighty enough when you get hit in movement wise. But at the same time, it's got a little bit of a flashy flair, kind of like a Devil May Cry, or some of those older, more action like hack and slash games. Even though this is a Souls-like, it's kind of cool that they have a little bit of that like kind of power fantasy thing going on, where you can really like, I don't know how to describe it other like going Super Saiyan or whatever, but you're like throwing out projectile energy beams and things. There's a lot of that fun stuff. So it's not just hack dodge. So it is cool also having 4 inputs for attacks. So that's really really good. Especially a lot of games lately, it seems like they've simplified where you just have one attack button, and I really don't like that because I like being able to have like different skills and combos I can use for different situations, and it feels like I'm engaging more with the combat. Here you have 4 separate inputs, so you've got a light attack and a heavy attack, and then for each weapon you have an interchangeable skill on the weapon that you can learn via the skill tree, and you have a weapon skill that's just inherent to that weapon. They're almost kind of like trick weapons in Bloodborne, a lot of them. Not quite, but they each have like their own, kind of like Liza P. They each have their own like little, um, thing about them that will cause them to act a little differently than the other. They're not all just spears. There's, for example, this one spear you find really early on, that both ends of the spear like have chains that can come out of the handle and turn into whips like on both ends, and you have an attack where she whips them around. It's really really cool. So each weapon's got kind of its own flair to it, is what I'm trying to say, and it keeps them all interesting and fun to mess around with. So enemies and bosses are challenging at times, but they are fair when you properly engage with the systems they supply to you. Pay extra attention to the tutorials here. There's a lot to learn, but once you incorporate it all, the combat is up there with some of the very best in the genre, in my opinion. Although it's not quite as tight as like maybe Skiro or some of those, I think the fun factor is up there with any of them. And I just think once you engage with all the systems, there's so much at your disposal and so many ways to counter in certain situations. It's not mindless. It feels like you're really interacting with what's going on. So I do also kind of slightly miss the traditional leveling system. We've got a tree here, and it works fine in its place, but I don't think it allows the level of customization that you would get in a lot of games, especially obviously Elden Ring's a gold standard. And this game isn't that. It's a much smaller game, obviously, but basically the way it works, whichever weapons you invest in kind of dictate not only your attack, via agility or strength. Each weapon you pick also determines your health, your magic power, etc. So builds are slightly less diverse and kind of forces specialization somewhat. But you can have some diversity of builds based on what's offered in each weapon tree. It's just truncated and simplified versus a game like Elden Ring, where you just invest in stats, and then you could make a magic in Elden Ring, like a magic and arcane build or a strength and X build. You can do whatever you want. Here, it is dictated by what's available in your tree. So just be aware of that. And it does force a little bit of specialization, but you could still decide to make your character more tanky or more strength based with less health. I mean, there is some of that, but it's just way simplified. So also, there's lots of outfits. There's talismans, things like that for customization. You will need to pay special attention to your outfits though, because the resistances actually matter quite a bit. There can be huge differences based on what you're wearing as far as elemental damage you take or strike versus slash damage you take and everything. So you really can't just wear what you prefer the look of or overall you prefer in combat. Really, I think for different bosses, you got to pay attention to what you're wearing if you're struggling and maybe change that out. So I actually don't like transmogrification in games. I hate it because for me, it causes me to not experiment. Like I'll find a something I like the way that it looks, and I'll throw it on, or I'll find a really tanky piece of armor, and then there's another one I like the look of, so I'll just transmog it on, and I'll leave it the whole game. Where when they don't offer that, it causes me to mix and match and play around with it more, and I also get to where I'm more excited for finding armor pieces through the game because I'm getting more options. But I know that's a unpopular opinion. Most people love that, so I'm not going to consider that a negative. That's just for me personally. So the environments and their overall design are incredible here. You have some of the prettiest environments, which are a pleasure to look at, and at the same time, that grimdark feeling is there with the death and destruction everywhere you look. Level design is peak Dark Souls. So in that more linear pathing way with branching paths, you have choices on whether to attack certain areas, overlapping paths, verticality. There's lots to explore. And like say when you get in the town area, it doesn't just feel as an improvement to Dark Souls, by the way. It doesn't just feel like a maze with a bunch of closed doors. You can actually enter a lot of the places and find secrets as you look around. So as far as like Souls games that take that more Dark Souls 1 through 3 level design approach, this one is up there level design wise with Dark Souls 1 in my opinion, and up there with Black Myth Wukong as far as the interesting and beautiful visually the places are to look at. So the only thing I would prefer is some more open areas, but I may have just not seen them yet, as like I'm only like 15 hours into the game at this point, 15 to 20, somewhere in that. Although I'm using a lot of really early footage here, so sound design. There's nothing revolutionary here that affects gameplay, but the music is really good. You have your usual indicators and HUD notifications for skills, etc. It all sounds really good, and it's mostly appealing. The one thing that really has got on my nerves are the birds that are in the environment. There's uh, a certain type of bird that you'll see a lot of that drops an item, and it feels like they're everywhere. And they're already grading me at like once I hit 10 hours in, I was getting annoyed. I do like the mechanic of them dropping the item, and it kind of forces you to look through the environment more and listen for them, but they can be heard far enough away that it feels like I'm hearing them just nonstop. So, not taking any points off, but I thought I'd mention it. But yeah, the music and sound effects are all really good. Nothing earth shattering, but pretty good. As far as the story, when I like was reading about it, because I was excited on the just visually what the game looked like and the gameplay and everything. After watching trailers, I read about the story and it interested me very little and sounded super generic. You got elements of Bloodborne and Neo right off the bat, where we're a pirate who lands in a mysterious land, and then also there's a plague turning people into monsters. I mean, that's like right out of Bloodborne, and then the pirate thing's like right out of Neo. So I expected it to be super generic, but it's been better than I expected that premise could be capable of. I also struggle to get into stories in Eastern games just because the traditional Chinese names or Japanese, in either one all sound the same to me phonetically, as opposed to like I think they did a good job with Sekiro, where a lot of the characters had code names like Wolf, Alfather, like Lady Butterfly, and then you had just Emma. You had more simplified names, and I think they know for a global audience that helps a little bit. It's nothing like negative, but it kind of does hurt the story for me a little bit because when they're talking about real minor characters you may only interact with once or twice, and their name is like Boshao something or other. I have trouble remembering that, and I know it's just because I'm English speaking, but I did want to at least mention that. So, but the stories are interesting enough so far. Outside the names, I'm just having trouble like remembering who's who or like putting their names with like what I heard 5 hours ago, someone I met once. So, it like I said, it didn't really bother me with like Sekiro because you only had a few of the names like that. You had Genichiro and Ishin, but they were recurring characters who were major parts of the story. So it was easy to remember their name and put a face with their name. But just for the minor characters, sometimes it's tough for me to remember. Um, I feel like they also did a good job visually storytelling. It's easy to look at each place you're in and kind of tell what it is and what happened there. Just those two things. Where am I? What's happened? Like this is a bandit camp that was infected, or this is a monastery that was overrun by enemies, or you can kind of tell those two things pretty much right off the bat based on where you are, just from visual storytelling as well. And that's pretty good. So overall, story's been interesting, but nothing I'm gonna, remember forever or write home about. So that's fine in a Souls like though. I really weight this a lot less than I would most other games. All right. So with all that said, would I recommend you play Wuchang Fallen Feathers? Yeah, absolutely. I would. I think it's the best Souls like we've gotten, non from software. I'd put it even above for me. Liza P, Lords of the Fallen, which I actually liked a lot more than most people. Um, I would put it above First Berserker Kazan, which isn't really a Souls like, but it's got elements to it. By the way, I see people say, "Oh my God, we get so many Souls likes on the trailer of every game coming out." Just if it has like one or two Souls like elements, like it'll have bonfires, and they're like, "Oh, not another Souls like," but we actually really get like 2 to 3 a year. It's just so weird to me. Like I don't ever see people commenting on sim racers coming out. Not another sim racer, not another military shooter. I see that like all the time. It drives me nuts. But then they'll like comment under one and be like, "Oh, it looks badass." Phantom Blade Zero, like which I think it looks great too. But they're complaining on all these other games. I just feel like devs are going to start seeing that and quit making these type games, which I think they're awesome. But anyways, side topic. Yeah, I mean, I would check it out, even if you're someone who thinks we get too many Souls likes. It's got so many elements of different things here. Like if you like Sekiro or Bloodborne, I think the combat's a little more fast paced along the lines of that than maybe Elden Ring or Dark Souls. The world design to me is almost as good as Dark Souls One, and it's pretty to look at as much as any game we've gotten over the last few years. Like even up there with Black Myth Wukong. The combat's deep enough, but it's easy to pick up too. It will feel a little hard at first, but you can just dodge and learn it pretty quick. Um, I really can't recommend it enough, other than the performance issues, which I didn't experience at all. So, yeah, I would recommend heavily check this game out. It's on Game Pass, so no excuses. And yeah, if you hate it, that's fine. But if you have Game Pass, you're not really out anything. And I don't think you would anyways. I think you'll probably be like, dang, Sweaty Zeus, you're right. But anyways, let me know what you guys think about the performance issues. I don't know if that's just maybe because my card's capable of FSR4. I don't even know if the game's running on that yet or what the deal is, but um, I don't know. I had good experience. It's been 120 solid for me in frame gen without it. Um, it's like at 75, 80 the whole time, and that's running it in 4K native. So that's pretty good to me for launch. But Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. It's Sweaty Zeus. I hope to see you all around. Please like and sub and all that stuff, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care.